Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am here to read Project Sunlight Chapter 4. So let's just jump right into it. It is one of those bleak November nights on planet Earth, bleak at least in the city of Rochester, New York, where across the black expanse of Lake Ontario, winds bring a fine biting snow, tossing it over the city in blinding gusts of white. Sunlight, clearing her tiny, immaculate kitchen, hears its thin tattoo against the window and shivers inwardly. Snow can be cozy when it shuts two in together, but just the opposite when one is alone. She is not really alone, of course. Her girls, excited by the snow as all Earth children seem to be, have their noses pressed against the large living room window, watching the flakes fall on the sidewalk below. It is indeed a lovely sight. I, too, am a bit fascinated by falling snow and wish I might stand with them, my arms about them, for I love Sunlight's daughters. I would like them to know that though they may be missing one parent, all heaven is concerned about them, that they need have no fears, no insecurity. The phone rings. Carol leaps to answer it, smiles at the voice on the other end, and announces happily to her mother that Michael is bringing over some corn to pop. When he arrives a half hour later, snow clings to his jacket and his hair. The girls brush him off and frisk him for the popcorn, which they soon have in their popper. When they sit together later, watching television, Carol curls up in Michael's lap and Jenny snuggles by her mother. Sunlight. If you aren't careful, Michael, that one will domesticate you yet. Michael. I'm all for domestication, Maggie, but only when the conditions are right. Carol. I wish you didn't talk in big words. I can't understand. What does domesticate mean? Michael. It means using your charms to entice a poor, helpless young man to sit beside the fire munching popcorn forever. Carol. Sounds okay to me. Michael, laughing. You women are all the same. Sunlight. You really should settle down beside someone's fire pretty soon, Michael. You aren't getting any younger, and look how great you are with children. Michael. Is that an invitation? Sunlight. No, silly. I'm endangering a perfectly good friendship by urging you into marriage to someone else. Michael. I've told you, Meg, it's a nasty world. If these two little gals were mine, I wouldn't sleep nights for what's ahead of them. If it's okay with you, I'll just help you worry when the time comes. Sunlight. Don't say I didn't warn you. When you're a lonely old man in a nursing home without kith or kin, now you girls hit the bed. You've stalled long enough. The girls go off to their bedroom, and Sunlight gathers up the dishes and picks up stray pieces of popcorn off the floor. Michael. Does that mean it's time for me to go too? Sunlight. No, Michael, sit and chat a bit. These snowy nights make me edgy. Michael. Remember when your dad used to drive a carload of us out to Chad's Hill on Saturday nights when we were kids? You loved the snow then. You were little and intense like Carol, and you'd stand with your face turned up to the sky, just letting the flakes fall on your cheeks. The rest of us would laugh at you, but you didn't mind. You were enchanted with the magic of winter and didn't care a whit for our laughter. It's still the same now, Maggie. Sunlight. But I'm not that same girl, Michael. A little of the enchantment has rubbed off life as well as wintertime. Tell me about your work, all the trials of the suffering city. Maybe it will make me feel good by comparison. Michael. I don't really want to talk about it. Sometimes I think I'm going in the wrong business. The stories that pass over my desk are depressing. They make me wonder what it's all about anyway. By the way, how's your friendship with Sybil coming? Sunlight. She's quite a lady. I'm glad she was persistent. I realize now I had shut myself away from everyone but you, and probably would have shut you out too if you would have let me. It feels good to have a friend again, and I like the gal. She has a good mind and doesn't play any games. I guess about all we've learned about the Bible is how ignorant we are. You need some kind of base to build on. Everything we read just creates more questions in our minds. By the way, How come when some women visited Christ's tomb, it says they went after the Sabbath as the first day of the week was beginning to dawn? I thought the Sabbath was the first day of the week. Michael, there's a simple answer, Meg. You know it yourself if you stop and think. What day do the Jews keep? Sunlight, Saturday. Michael, and what nationality was Jesus? Sunlight, a Jew, of course. How stupid of me. So he kept Saturday? And so did all of those other people who we're reading about. I just never thought about that. Michael, Christians observed Sunday today in honor of Christ's resurrection, which took place on the first day of the week, as you read. Probably he himself gave instructions for the change if you look for it. Sunlight, well, that will give me something to tell Sybil. You know what I'd like, Michael? I'd like you to read me the last 3 chapters in the book of Mark. That book is our assignment for this week, and I've not quite finished. I'll just close my eyes and try to visualize it as you read. I think it's about the trial and crucifixion of Christ. Sunlight hands Michael the small white Bible, and he reads, his voice quiet and steady against the rising wind outside. When he finishes, Sunlight speaks. Sunlight, you should have studied for the priesthood. Seeing you're going to the monastic route anyway. You read it so well. I was right there watching everything that happened to Christ. You know, I've come to the conclusion that the cross was either the focal point of all time or the greatest hoax anyone has ever pulled off. I'm just going to turn my heat down, guys. I'm sorry. Hold on. I'm in my car. Just getting a little hot here. Okay. Turn this off. There we go. Okay. Michael, as I read, I thought it was strange. I'd never read those words before, never read a word in the entire Bible for that matter. I picked up a little of the historical background of those times in college, but somehow have never held the book in my hand until this very moment. Somehow I felt deeply moved. I don't think it was a hoax, Maggie. Sunlight, if you really believed on him, you would have to make changes in your life. Everyone he called had to be willing to change, to learn his new lifestyle, to walk away from old things. I'm almost afraid to believe for what he might ask of me. Michael, I think I'd like him to ask something of me, a difficult thing that would startle me out of my rut. But those are easy words, and how did we get off onto this anyhow? What would you like to do Saturday night? Sunlight, you choose. You always leave it up to me, and I either dance myself into exhaustion or drink too much. Michael, how about something simple then, like going skating at the outdoor rink downtown? Sunlight, hey, that's neat. I love it. I haven't had a pair of skates on in years, but I bet I'm still good. Michael, how about taking the girls along? We knew how to skate long before we were their age. Sunlight, Michael, what a friend you are. They will probably fold up with excitement before the night ever arrives. Michael leaves and Sunlight makes ready for bed. It is strange indeed to think that there are decent young men like Michael who have never held a Bible in their hands. That book is man's opportunity to peek into heaven, to know why he is on planet Earth and how to survive his predicament. It would seem men and women would be poring over the Bible every spare moment, but they live as though their meager 75-year lifespans, if you're lucky, are all that really matter. They mourn if their favorite television show is canceled for an evening, yet ignore the vital things concerning eternity. The prince explained to me that the rebel beclouds the minds of the earthlings until they can hardly comprehend their danger. Only Earth Friend can penetrate that cloud, and most reject his attempts. Sybil was one of the rare ones who was ripe to be delivered from the rebel's power. Thank God she shared with Sunlight. That took courage. It is Tuesday evening, and Sybil and Sunlight sit at the small kitchen table in Sunlight's apartment. Sunlight has a red pencil poised above her Bible. Sunlight, I find I can't read without this pencil. I'm constantly finding things I want to underline. There are so many astonishing things in this book. Sometimes I get stuck on one verse, and it's so mind-blowing, I never get any further at that sitting. Guess I'd never have finished if Michael hadn't read me those last 3 chapters the other night. Sybil, does he think we have lost our minds? Sunlight, on the contrary, I think he was quite impressed with what Mark had to say, and also with the man Jesus. Michael would have been an ancient follower of Christ because he believed so strongly in causes. Sybil, would he like to study with us? Sunlight, he's a very private person. I think he'd be aghast at our brainstorming, but he'll listen to anything I want to share with him and give it a careful thought. Sybil, I'm sure you realize, child, that the man is in love with you. Sunlight, silent for a moment. It's not like you think, Sybil. We share a lot of memories, right back to the sandbox days, in fact. He's lonely, I'm lonely. For now, we meet each other's needs. That's all there is to it. Sooner or later, he'll meet someone who will sweep him off his feet, and he'll ditch all the altruistic notions. Sybil only smiles. Sunlight, I never knew before that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were simply 4 men telling their own versions of the same story. I'm probably the last person on earth to find that out. It would seem to make for very boring reading, but I found myself going back and forth between Matthew and Mark, comparing their accounts, and it turned out to be fascinating. To what great thoughts did Mark inspire you? Sybil, that Christ couldn't move without stumbling over someone. He had no privacy. It said here in chapter 6, verse 31, that Christ suggested he and his disciples go to an isolated place to rest a while. For there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure so much to eat. But even then, when they arrived at their destination, the people saw them departing, and many knew him, and ran afoot thither out of all the cities, and out went them, and came together unto him. And Jesus, when he came out, saw much people, and was moved with compassion toward them, because they were as sheep, not having a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. Verses 33 and 34. And here, further on this, in the same chapter, verses 53, 50, and 56, it says, And when they had passed over, they came into the land of Gennesaret, and drew to the shore. And when they were come out of the ship, straightway they knew him, and ran through the whole region round about, and began to carry about in beds those that were sick, where they heard he was, and whithersoever he entered, into villages or cities or country, they laid the sick in the streets, and besought him that they might touch, if it were but the border of his garment. And as many as touched him were made whole. Meg, when I read those verses, I wept. I saw humanity clawing at Jesus, fascinated by his teachings, greedy for his loaves and fishes, scrabbling for his healing's touch. Imagining even the border of his robe was magic. I felt his hunger, his weariness. He must have been turned off sometimes by their grabbing, yet there is the record. He was moved with compassion towards them, because they were as sheep not having a shepherd. He simply couldn't walk away and abandon them. If he feels the same way about our generation today, he must be sick with frustration. For instead of clutching at him today, we are arrogant and indifferent. I have a feeling that is worse. But anyhow, to get back to the multitudes, I found a verse in chapter 14 that broke my heart. And immediately while he yet spake, cometh Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves, from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Verse 43. For 3 years Christ had touched those pushing, shoving mobs with his healing hands, and he did touch them too, no matter how diseased or filthy. Had taught them when he was exhausted and faint with hunger, and now a multitude comes out to take him with the swords and staves, and it just wasn't fair, Meg. And before that, when he was in the garden praying and agonizing over what lay ahead, they slept. His best friends slept. Mark 14:33 through 42. Can you imagine? Sybil's cheeks are flushed and her eyes shiny with tears. Sunlight. I was deeply moved as I read this week too. In fact, the book of Mark worked a minor miracle in my life. Sybil, tell me about it quickly. Sunlight, go back to here, chapter 11, verse 24 through 26. Listen, therefore I say unto you, what things soever you desire when you pray, believe that you receive them, and ye shall have them. And when you stand praying, forgive, if you have aught any against any, that your Father also which is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses. If you do not forgive, neither will your Father which is in heaven forgive your trespasses. Well, this past week I've been praying each morning just a simple prayer for the girls, then that you and I would understand what we are studying, and for forgiveness of my sins. I don't care much for the bitter, sharp-tongued person I've become over the past 2 years. So when I read those verses about God not hearing us if we cannot forgive our fellow men, it was like a slap in the face. As plainly as if God had written me a letter, I saw the awful ugliness I feel for Jim, plus the jealousy and the hatred I have for his wife. Suddenly, the anger and the hurt and the bitterness that were bottled up inside of me poured out. I cried for hours. Luckily, the girls were in bed, and I lay down on the living room rug and I sobbed and dug my fingers so hard into the shag that the next morning, half of my nails were broken. In my mind, I screamed at Jim all the things I had wanted to say for so long, horrible, ugly things. And then I cried harder than ever, for I realized that under the anger was the most awful hurt I have ever looked at. I had never looked at it before. I guess I hadn't dared. It hit me then that to have hurt so badly, I must have loved a lot. And how could I feel so bitter towards someone I loved so much? I knew there in the darkness that I would always care deeply for him and be concerned for his happiness. But I prayed for a new prayer, Sybil, that God would help me forgive Jim and erase the bitterness from my heart. When I got myself together, I went straight to the phone and I called Jim's home. Marie, that's his wife, answered, and I asked her if she and Jim would like to have dinner with the girls with me on Sunday. It took her by surprise, and I know she was uncomfortable, but she checked with Jim and said they loved to come. Now I rather doubt they were all that enthusiastic, but I want to make things more normal for Jim and the girls, and we have to start somewhere. I've asked Michael to come and would like you and Bill to join us if he's home. If he's not, just come by yourself. I think it will be less awkward for everyone if there's a little dinner party. I used to be great at dinner parties, but haven't entertained anyone in months. So that's the book of Mark, what it did for me. Sybil, surely you touched the healing hem of his garment. Meg, I'm sitting here covered with goosebumps at your story. Sorry, I just need to turn my light on. It's starting to get dark in my car. Okay. Well, I'd hardly call myself healed. I feel pretty uneasy about Sunday. My reactions are far from what they should be toward Jim and Marie, but the girls are ecstatic, and a great weight is rolled from my shoulders now that I can admit what I feel is more hurt than anger. Can you come? Sybil, Bill will be home that day, and I think he will humor me because he's been gone so much lately. I want you to meet him. I've made him sound dreadful, but he's really very a special man when he wants to be. Sunlight, do you love him? Sybil, unfortunately, yes. Sunlight, why unfortunately? Sybil, because I would have long ago built myself a more rewarding life if my heart didn't start leaping around in my chest on the rare occasions when he comes walking through the door. She pauses as if reluctant to dwell upon a painful subject. Sunlight, you really did your homework this week. You put me to shame. Sybil, chuckling. Remember, I have a lot more time than you do, and this whole thing has given purpose to my life and my days. She glances at her watch. It's 10 o'clock and we've hardly scratched the surface. What did you learn? Sunlight, I can hardly believe it, but I don't dread those hours after the girls are in bed anymore. I find myself looking forward to the quiet time when I can open up the Bible. And I especially look forward to those nights when we share what we've studied. And I'm so glad you spoke to me in that elevator that day, Sybil, but you didn't answer my question. What did we learn? Sunlight, I learned from him that I can afford to love Jim even if he no longer loves me back. Christ did that, in loving us. He even loved those who crucified him. I have to admit, I don't have any good feelings at all the time. One night I was watching television and I didn't feel like reading the Bible at all. MASH. And the book of Mark seemed light years away. Totally unrelated. It's very easy to get disconnected from religion, I fear. Sybil, I don't like the word religion. It sounds like bingo games and church suppers. I like what you and I have right here. I fear if we tried to fit into a mold, a denominational mold, that it might slip right through our fingers. Tonight, I'm going to pray you won't laugh if I'm not, sorry, if I'm not eloquent. Sunlight, promise. Sybil, we come to you with delight, Lord, and with awe and love. Will you teach us how to serve you? Will you give us the kind of faith that pleased you so much when you found it on earth? Please be in Meg's home and in mine. Amen. Sunlight, that was a beautiful prayer, Sybil. Let's not spoil it by chatting. Just let yourself out, and I'll see you Sunday at 1 o'clock. I should be thrilled, and I am, but I tremble for those 2 newborn babes. The rebel is furious at what is happening and will never allow them to continue to learn and grow unmolested. His brilliant and evil mind is already scheming to destroy Earth Friend's work. If they will only continue to pray and study, no matter how the rebel batters them, all his plottings will be in vain. But it is not easy for Earthlings, for they cannot see the drama going on behind the scenes. They can only trust in the prince, and that's often difficult when their world begins to crumble. I long to leave a little note on Sunlight's pillow tonight saying, hold on, friend, just hold on, no matter what comes. But that is not my privilege. All that can be done for her, the prince and Earth Friend will have to do. So that's the end of chapter 4, guys. I hope you guys are enjoying this book. Like I don't know if I said this at the beginning when I started reading, but I absolutely love this book. I read it for the first time a few months ago, like with some women at my church. We read it together and I fell in love with it. So that's why I wanted to share it on my channel. So I hope you guys are enjoying it, and I hope everybody's doing good out there, and I will try to get chapter 5 up soon. I know I've kind of been not great at getting these up like weekly like I wanted to try to do. I will try to get chapter 5 up, soon. I promise. And guys, remember, no matter what's going on in our lives, and I know you guys are probably, a lot of people are struggling and going through a lot. We live in crazy times, guys. The spiritual battle is very real. But remember, guys, with Jesus, we always have a reason to smile. So until next time, guys, God bless.